Delve into the shadows. Uncover the truth. This is FBI and CIA Unsealed.
In the shadows of 2006, a secret plan was forming inside the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, codenamed Operation Fast and Furious. The idea? Allow suspected gun traffickers to purchase weapons illegally, hoping they'd lead law enforcement to Mexican drug cartel leaders. But from the very beginning, cracks were forming. Agents raised concerns. Supervisors pushed forward, and hundreds of guns started to vanish into the void. With surveillance thin and oversight weaker, agents watched as hundreds of firearms, AK-47s, AR-15s, and .50 caliber rifles, were sold to known cartel-linked straw purchasers. Instead of intercepting the sales, the guns were allowed to walk. The hope? That these weapons would resurface in cartel raids and help map out criminal networks. But soon, these guns began crossing into Mexico and disappearing without a trace. Inside the ATF's Phoenix office, discontent grew. Field agents were frustrated. Watching weapons vanish without arrests felt like sabotage. Agent John Dodson became one of the first to break ranks. He warned that these guns weren't being tracked effectively, and worse, they could end up killing people. But when he raised red flags to his superiors, he was told to stand down. The mission was still on. By late 2009, disturbing reports surfaced. Fast and furious weapons were turning up at Mexican crime scenes. Rifles from the operation were linked to massacres, cartel shootouts, and unsolved murders. Mexican authorities were unaware these guns were part of a U.S. investigation. The very weapons the ATF let walk were now fueling cartel violence, costing lives on both sides of the border. On December 14, 2010, U.S. Border Patrol agent Brian Terry was killed in a gunfight near Rio Rico, Arizona. Among the weapons found at the scene, 2 rifles traced directly back to Operation Fast and Furious. The tragedy sent shockwaves through the ATF and the nation. For many, it was the moment the operation went from controversial to catastrophic. Brian Terry's death became the face of a failed mission. The death of Agent Brian Terry ignited a media firestorm. News outlets across America demanded answers. How could U.S. agencies let guns fall into cartel hands? Talk shows, newspapers, and congressional leaders blasted the ATF. The story was no longer buried in internal memos. It was national news. Public trust in law enforcement wavered, and Fast and Furious became synonymous with government recklessness. In early 2011, the U.S. Congress launched an official investigation into Operation Fast and Furious. The House Oversight Committee, led by Representative Darrell Issa, subpoenaed internal ATF documents and called agents to testify. What they uncovered was stunning. Poor communication, lack of tracking technology, and a breakdown in interagency coordination. Lawmakers demanded accountability, and heads were about to roll. As the investigation deepened, top officials at the ATF came under intense scrutiny. Acting Director Kenneth Melson was accused of knowing more than he admitted. Internal emails revealed serious mismanagement. Under pressure, Melson was reassigned. The fallout spread across multiple agencies, including the Department of Justice. The question wasn't just who approved the operation, but who tried to cover it up. While the ATF was front and center, the FBI and Department of Justice also faced questions. Critics alleged DOJ officials delayed or withheld evidence during congressional inquiries. Emails showed DOJ leaders debating how much to reveal. The FBI's investigative role blurred amid internal politics. The scandal revealed deep fractures within U.S. law enforcement agencies, shaking public confidence further. Amid mounting pressure, whistleblowers stepped forward, exposing the full scope of the fiasco. Agents testified about ignored warnings, missing weapons, and internal orders to keep silent. Their courage brought critical evidence to light, but also highlighted the toxic culture inside agencies. These voices fueled congressional probes and public outrage, demanding justice for those affected. The Senate Judiciary Committee also launched its own inquiry, aiming to hold the Justice Department accountable. Senators grilled top officials in televised hearings, demanding transparency and answers. The hearings exposed inconsistencies and evasion tactics, intensifying political pressure. Operation Fast and Furious had become a bipartisan scandal shaking Washington. In a historic moment, Attorney General Eric Holder was called to testify before Congress. Facing tough questions about his knowledge and involvement, Holder repeatedly claimed he was unaware of the operation's details. Yet internal documents suggested otherwise. The hearings polarized lawmakers, sparking fierce debate over accountability at the highest levels of government. The Department of Justice's Inspector General released a damning report detailing systemic failures in Operation Fast and Furious. It criticized poor oversight, lack of communication, and failure to monitor weapons. The report confirmed that top officials ignored warnings, endangering agents and civilians alike. It called for reforms to prevent future disasters, but trust had already been deeply damaged. In the wake of the scandal, multiple high-ranking officials resigned or were reassigned. Kenneth Melson, the acting ATF director, stepped down amid criticism. Several DOJ officials faced disciplinary actions. Yet many questioned whether the punishments matched the gravity of the consequences. The fallout revealed deep challenges in accountability within federal agencies. The scandal strained diplomatic ties between the United States and Mexico. Mexican officials demanded answers and increased cooperation to combat cartels. The revelation that U.S. guns fuel violence on Mexican soil sparked outrage. Both nations grappled with rebuilding trust amid a complicated and dangerous border landscape. In response to the fallout, Congress pushed for legislative reforms to prevent similar operations from failing again. New laws aim to improve firearm tracking, increase interagency communication, and strengthen oversight of undercover investigations. Although progress was made, many critics argued these changes came too late for the victims of Fast and Furious. Operation Fast and Furious left a lasting scar on public trust in law enforcement. Communities questioned how far agencies should go in secret operations and whether oversight was adequate. The scandal became a cautionary tale about government transparency and the dangerous consequences when accountability fails. The story of Operation Fast and Furious captured national attention through documentaries, news specials, and investigative journalism. Media outlets dug deep, uncovering new details and interviewing key players. This wide coverage kept the conversation alive, ensuring the lessons of the scandal were not forgotten. Families of victims and law enforcement officers called for justice and compensation for the losses suffered. Lawsuits were filed against the government, demanding accountability and reparations. The legal battles underscored the human cost of the flawed operation and highlighted the need for systemic change. Operation Fast and Furious remains a stark warning about the dangers of risky undercover tactics without proper oversight. It reshaped how law enforcement approaches firearm trafficking investigations. Above all, it reminds us that every decision has consequences, and that protecting lives must always come first. Thanks for watching this deep dive into Operation Fast and Furious. If you want more unsealed stories from the FBI and CIA, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Stay informed, stay curious. Only here on FBI and CIA Unsealed.